show. I lace the track, you lock the flow. So far from hanging on the block for dough. Notorious, they got to know that life ain't always what it seemed to be. Words can't express what you mean to me. Even though you're gone, we still a team. Through your family, I'll fulfill your dreams. In the future, can't wait to see if you open up the gates for me. Reminisce sometime. The night they took my friend. Try to black it out, but it plays again. When it's real, feeling's hard to conceal. Can't imagine all the pain I feel. Give anything to hear half your breath. I know you're still living your life after death. Us while we pray for you. Every day we pray for you. Till the day we meet again. In my heart is where I keep you, friend. Memories give me the strength I need to proceed. Strength I need to believe. My thoughts big, I just can't define. Wish I could turn back the hands of time. Us in the six, shop for new clothes and kicks. You and me taking flicks, making hits, stages they receive you on. Still can't believe you're gone. Give anything to hear half your breath. I know you're still living your life after death.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Don Messer, the Executive Director of the Center for Health and Hope, as well as the Chair of the United Methodist Association of Retired Clergy and Friends. We are glad to have all of you here tonight for the second trans webinar. You know, on some days, we are just too relevant and too timely. When the Friends organized this event through the Center for Health and Hope, the UMARC, along with many friends, including Park Hill United Methodist Church and Christ Church, Denver, together we decided to sponsor this event. We could now be convicted of being too pertinent and germane to our contemporary life. For today's social media screams out loudly about the stigma trans people are facing in America this very day. This afternoon, Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky had a confirmation hearing of Dr. Rachel Levine, the first transgender person to be nominated for a Senate-confirmed position in the federal government, went completely off track, grilling her about so-called genital mutilation of minor children, calling it castration and female circumcision, blaming increasing rates of trans-identified youth on social pressure to conform. Dr. Levine, a noted pediatrician who will become the nation's Assistant Secretary of Health, calmly thanked Senator Paul, a self-certified eye doctor, for his new interest in transgender medicine. Senator Patty Murray of Washington State criticized Senator Paul, saying questions should be focused on a person's qualifications, not on ideological and harmful misrepresentations. The LGBTQ Victory Institute said Senator Paul's disgraceful comment echoed the talking points of organizations that say gays deserve AIDS and LGBTQ persons should be criminalized. Earlier today, after a Democratic lawmaker, Representative Marie Newman of Illinois, posted a transgender pride flag in honor of her daughter and in support of the Equality Act, her Republican next door neighbor from Georgia, Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, posted a large anti-transgender sign on the opposite side. Plus, Greene released a video attacking the trans daughter of the other congresswoman, saying, "Your biological son does not belong in my daughter's bathrooms, locker rooms, and sports teams." So we meet tonight amid a national controversy under the sterling leadership of Ms. Savannah Sanburg and her guest speakers. She is the interim chair of the Department of Arts and Communication of the Community College of Aurora, an active member of the Park Hill United Methodist Church. She will, in a few minutes, introduce our other guest speakers. So yes, we gather to learn and to ask questions. We gather to combat violence, misunderstanding, stigma, and hate. We gather to admit we have failed the trans community. We gather as people committed to health and to hope for all God's people everywhere. So I thank you for participating. I thank you to Savannah. I thank Chin. I thank Amy, people behind the scenes who are making tonight's program meaningful and effective for all of us. At this point, I'm pleased to introduce one of my pastors, Reverend Lawrence Rainwater, who is going to lead us in prayer.
Thank you for inviting me to offer a prayer. And yes, my name is Laura Rainwater. I'm one of the pastors at Park Hill United Methodist Church, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. And it's my honor to be here. But after watching that video, let us pray. Holy and loving God, sometimes we forget that you love each and every one of us. Our hearts break as we name those who have been killed because of their willingness to be authentic, their willingness to be trans, their willingness to live in such a way that they feel like they are really who they are. And Lord, our hearts break that 30 people died in our nation last year. Our hearts break that our political leaders in our country still continue the stigmas Our hearts break because this is not the way that you created us or you created our world. So help us as we listen and honor the stories that have been shared already and the stories that will be shared. Help us to remember we each have a story, but especially those who have stories that people want to squash or to try to change because of their lack of understanding. So we are grateful for this time, a time where we can grieve at the harm that's been committed, a time we can lament that harm is committed even today, that we can ask for your healing, ask for change in our world and in our communities where people are persecuted. Our military that still is not addressing this issue, those that have been harmed in so many different ways, because God, you are a God of compassion. And so we call on your compassion to fill us and to help us to speak out with the injustices so that all people might feel like they can be their authentic selves as they tell their story. So help us to feel your love and support during this time, even as we learn very hard things. But yet we respect each person gathered here today. And we pray this in your Son's holy name, Jesus the Christ. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor Laura. Your message and words, may they heal us and hear us tonight as we engulf on one of the most thought-provoking and groundbreaking webinar presentations. So welcome to the second of a three trifecta of trans lives and stories. I'm really excited and honored to have the opportunity to share the discourse in our agenda with you all as we approach upon the legacy and life stories of trans individuals, moreover, our own individual narrative. Webinar 2 tells the cultural, political, and familial stories that touch upon an overcrowded world that significantly highlights that Black, brown, and transgender bodies are an essential viewing in American discourse. Furthermore, the stories tonight are deeply personal and are being shared to leave you with a clear message: love. It is incumbent upon us as a body to vote, to change, and to dismantle the ignorance of American injustice and a system that penalizes people for simply being who they were born to be. Imagine a world in which you were born into and are punished simply by the color of your skin, your gender, or your sexual orientation. Moreover, imagine a world that consistently ignores you constantly because you cannot help or change the color of your skin, your gender identity, or who you were born to be. America is broken and lacks the compassion to recognize the civility of a people who are simply born to just be. So tonight, let's change the discourse and unite in a powerful and common good to dismantle, deconstruct, and erode the historic transphobia that is successfully attributed to the erasure of transgender bodies in America and the world. So welcome. Welcome to all of you. First, I'd like to introduce Jonah Heintzleman. Jonah is a CSU engineering student applying for graduate school. Jonah is joining us tonight as a co-facilitator. I'm so excited for Jonah. Jonah, do you want to say hello?
Hello, everyone. It's great to have you here to listen to our stories and talk with us.
Excellent. Thank you, Jonah. If you all notice, I'm on my third cup of coffee. I usually teach 3 classes by Thursday, and it's been a long week. So if I get a little long-winded, I'll pull myself back in and have another sip of coffee. Next, we have a special guest presenter, which I'm really excited, is Maria Giuliani. And let me read her bio with you. Maria Giuliani is a Florida licensed mental health counselor and qualified supervisor for registered mental health and marriage and family counseling interns. Maria is a 20-year retired Navy veteran and founder of the Beyond the Matter Counseling and Counseling Services, which is a private practice located in Jacksonville, Florida. Maria is the Northeast Florida Regional Director of the Florida Mental Health Counselors Association and Veterans Counseling Veterans Incorporated. Maria is also a doctoral candidate at National University in Counseling, Education, and Supervision Program. Maria's current research foci include cultural competency standards in counseling, counselor education and supervision with the emphasis on military culture and military LGBT service members and veterans. Maria leans towards an integrative existential psychotherapy model, a reflective developmental model for supervision, and the constructive learning theory as an educator. Maria practices are trauma-informed and multicultural competent, offering a safe space for all. Maria's leadership and advocacy experiences includes presenting at professional conferences on a variety of clinical topics, including multicultural, military cultural competencies, trauma, and other issues related to military, veterans, and their families, and addressing unique issues related to the LGBTQI+ community. Maria G., would you like to give us a little bit of intro? Because that is one healthy resume.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here and be invited to give my little part to this this wonderful, wonderful webinar series that you're having. So I think you said everything as far as what my bio goes, and I look forward to doing my part of the presentation. So thank you for having me here.
Excellent, and thank you, Maria, for joining us. So, Chin, if we could take a look at the agenda for the participants so we can go over tonight's goals, as we have a very structured and organized, good Lord, Savannah, facilitation for you this evening. We've covered the welcome, introductions, and next we're going to talk briefly about trans culture and violence, including addressing culture, violence, politics, and a call to action. Then Maria will grace us with their wonderful presence for 30 to 40 minutes, deconstructing their presentation, which includes LGBT veterans and trans veterans, counseling and families, and Maria's research. After Maria's presentation, we will go into 2 breakout sessions. Breakout sessions A and B. Breakout session A will include Maria, and breakout session B will include myself and Jonah, where we will deconstruct politics and the call to action regarding culture and trans violence. And then we'll come together with a summary of our breakout sessions with some closing thoughts. Thank you, Chin. So our next slide, trans culture and violence. So yeah, can we go back to the religion and identity slide really quick, Chin? So both myself and Jonah wanted to include religion and identity as a framework in which we operated from. You obviously have heard from Pastor Laura tonight from the Park Hill United Methodist Church. Chen, can you go back one more slide? Well, another slide, sorry about that. Back to, there we go. So religion and identity, as we discussed in webinar 1, really have provided a space and a foundation for which I have been having the fortunate privilege to operate from. I do believe in God. I do believe in a higher power. And one of the misnomers is that religious institutions don't practice inclusion for trans identities. However, I can argue that this is not the case. Both Pastor Laura and Pastor Nathan have been fundamental in the processes of advocating for trans inclusion and have given and provided a safe space and a seat in the church. Being involved in the church, looking at community activism, the church is fundamentally a large part of my identity. And I thank Pastor Laura and Park Hill United Methodist Church, as well as Pastor Nathan. Jonah, do you want to talk a little bit about your church for a second?
Yeah, so I'm kind of a part of, well, I'm a member of Mayflower Church in Denver, but I'm also, I feel really close because that's where one of my moms works. And then my other mom works at Christ Church in Denver. And I've kind of always been raised with very open and affirming churches. And so my religion has never really like clashed heads with my gender or sexuality. And I know that that's not a very common experience, but I'm very thankful that it is the experience I had because I only feel love from my church when it comes to my gender identity.
Excellent. Thank you, Jonah. You guys are going to hear that theme amongst the 3 of us tonight. Love. Love is a constant framework and pedagogy in which we're operating from as we share our empowering stories with you all tonight. If you don't take away anything from this webinar tonight, the one message that you should take away is love. So first, we're going to talk a little bit about trans culture and violence. And so in the previous webinar, we talked a lot about definitions and the construct of semantics. Language is an essential rudimentary practice in any identity, particularly in-group or out-group. However, in the transgender culture or the trans culture, you begin to see this collectivistic culture where we begin to celebrate our identity. Thus, you see the multiplicity of the trans asterisk. Just alone, particularly on this slide, the list goes on and on and on. The message that we have for Representative Marjorie Greene: gender and sex are not mutually exclusive. They don't go hand in hand. Gender refers to your gender identity. Sex refers to your biological chromosomes assigned at birth. So Marjorie Greene, if you perhaps to get this text or tweet, please take a lesson and know that gender and sex are not mutually exclusive. Next slide, please. Trans culture is a unique set in and of itself. Clearly, in the 1980s, the ballroom culture, particularly in New York, gave a way in which trans identities could multiply and defeat the HIV and AIDS pandemic, which was so rampant. Fox Network Media Association essentially created a very hypersensitive and trans inclusion program called Pose. I'm not sure if any of you have seen it. It's currently in its 3rd season. However, they had to stop recording due to COVID. But Pose tells the stories of many trans individuals, some whom have transitioned, some who are trans, in the early 1980s fighting against the HIV pandemic. Clearly, the representation of trans in media has always been played in most cases by cisgender actors and actresses. We saw this in Boys Don't Cry. And we saw this also with Felicity Huffman, who played in trans, what's that film, Jonah? Do you remember the name of that film with Felicity Huffman? Trans, oh God, I'm drawing a blank.
I don't remember either. I'm sorry.
Oh, we'll go to Google.
It was Transamerica.
Transamerica, thank you. Amy, you came to class today, so let's give you 50 points extra credit. At this point, I would assign extra credit for people who know. So all too often, particularly in Hollywood, you would see major stars getting the roles who are cisgender, natural, heterosexist individuals who would play transgender roles, like in Transamerica. Thank you, Amy. I encourage you guys to watch the season 1 series on Netflix of Pose, because it really tells a very constructive timeline about the resources that were available and trans culture. And it shifts and tells an accurate portrait of the life that trans individuals had to live in the 1980s, that coupled with a very, very prejudiced and discriminatory HIV narrative. So next slide, please. Trans and violence. According to the HRC, in the United States in 2020, there were 25 trans and gender nonconforming deaths. And additionally, 30, we recently found out there was exactly 30. 91% were Black trans women, 81% were under the age of 30, and 68% lived in the South. Statistically speaking, of the slides that we showed you, the attention getter, 3 of the trans individuals were from Colorado. Next slide, please. Trans and politics. Here is a hot button issue. So the transgender community also is very political. We either identify as a 2-party system. In 2013, about eight years ago, Matt Cayley, who passed away 8 years ago, authored and wrote this political piece that looks at trans right and trans left. You see this photograph here on the left of me, kind of dressed in blue and black. Essentially, to argue, and HRC, to answer Myrna's question, it's the Human Rights Campaign Association. They are an LGBTQ-friendly nonprofit association who addresses needs and community practices and pedagogy and education and literacy for the LGBTQ+ community. So politics, is alive and in any community. So it's surprising when you see that a trans individual has a very conservative ideology. On the left side, so I identify as a very kind of moderate Democrat. I have voted both sides of the political aisle. In 2008, I was a staunch Hillary Clinton supporter, voted for her, wanted her to win. In 2016, I was a Hillary supporter. And the way in which politics has emerged, particularly in my life, is to do research on the candidate who advocates best for transgender individuals. The last webinar, we talked a lot about the DSM-5. That's the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, which gives diagnoses for individuals regarding mental health practices. And so both Jonah and I have specific viewpoints that is highly politicized, particularly in the trans community, when it comes to the diagnoses of the DSM-5. And we might ask our expert Maria to give us a little bit of context, but a lot of trans individuals view the DSM-5 as a politicized identity that creates a stigma around our trans identities. What that means is we are not ashamed of being trans. Our identities don't construct a form of a deviant behavior. Although we understand holistically that the DSM-5 is there to remove the barriers so that we can create a corrective action plan, the DSM-5 also can handcuff you in terms of the language and stigmatize you the rest of your life. For example, if you had diabetes, would you go to your doctor and ask for a prescription or diagnoses for sugar addiction, and then all of a sudden be classified as as an addiction to sugar, and then receive your medication in that way? And so that's how I see my trans identity. I shouldn't have to go to a doctor and be classified with a mental disorder and or addiction in order to solve something that should have been solved at birth. Jonah, do you have any comments about politics and where you see your political identity right now?
Yes, and so what something that's impacted me the most recently with politics is I'm trying to figure out the best way to word this. This wasn't something that I ever shared growing up, but my backup plan was always kind of to go into the military. It didn't really, that was kind of always my backup plan. And when that became, when the Trump administration made that not possible for me, even though that wasn't the path I was going down in life, it kind of felt like a rug was being ripped out from underneath me of these choices that I thought I had were no longer available for me. And then certain other people in my classes would make comments about how they agreed with those. They're like, well, I don't know anyone who would be affected by these decisions. And it kind of made me realize that the field that I was currently working in or studying in had very different views than I did about kind of my identities. And so with politics, for me, it comes with like a self-preservation kind of thing. I can, sit next to someone in class and think that I know them, and then learn that they are very right-leaning and believe that people like me shouldn't be allowed in higher education or shouldn't be allowed in the military or shouldn't be allowed to do anything. And so it's something that I always have to think about when I'm making friends. And it was very much in the forefront of my mind in Trump's America, and hopefully will be less so now. But it's something I always have to be mindful of. And especially now that I show up in the world as just a man, people look at me and they're just like, yeah, a dude. And so they'll say certain things to me without knowing that I have that trans identity. I hope that made sense.
It makes perfect sense. And it also brings us to another politicized point, the bathroom problem. There is no greater place that demands compulsory heterosexuality other than the bathroom. When I talk about the bathroom problem, particularly in the classes that I've taught with a variety of students who have multiplicity identities, we really explore the bathroom problem through a twofold framework. One, when you use a bathroom at home, does the bathroom door say boys or girls? No. And you're at your homes, and many homes throughout the world in America, there's usually one or two bathrooms, and then they're not prescripted to gender. So why is the construct or the fear created around public space when it comes to the bathroom? In most cases, it may appear that, and I remember in my male identity, I was in and out of that thing in 5 seconds, and so are many other men who use the bathroom. Whereas when I transitioned to become a female, that was like a rite of passage. I was never so excited to be able to use the bathroom because that's where community and connection existed. So the fear that goes along with the bathroom is often subjugated in towards of discomfort and the unknown. And in most cases, it appears that the idea of the discomfort for heterosexist or cisgender women shouldn't be about trans individuals using the bathroom. It should be about the peeping toms and the heterosexual men coming into the women's bathroom with a hidden agenda. So research has pointed to this all too often, that you are safe with trans individuals because we want to be normalized. We want to fit in. For us, it's about a rite of passage, not about sexual assault. However, the discourse and how they get conflated really rest, particularly, unfortunately, with cisgender women and as trans exclusionary radical feminists, which we also label as TERFs. Second wave feminism did a disharm to the transgender community. I have never understood how people whom operate in systems of oppression oppress others. Women, we get second wave feminism, it was essential, but why would you want to oppress another marginalized group when you yourself have been marginalized? So that's the dominant framework in which we have asked, particularly in the classroom when we're teaching conversations about the demand for compulsory heterosexuality, and specifically in the classroom. And TERFs, the definition of the word TERF, T-E-R-F, is trans radical exclusionary feminists. And Judith Butler writes about this concept in her book, Deconstructing Gender with Simone de Beauvoir in 1986. It's a fascinating read. So I think that does a good job of addressing politics. Next, we would like to put our headliner on, Maria G, to talk about Maria G's research and PowerPoint. I'd like to give the floor over to Maria G.
That was fast. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and screen share. Is that okay? Okay. All right. Did that come up?
Yes.
Great. Okay. I'm going to make sure. What happened? I don't know what happened. Where'd my stuff go? Sorry, technical difficulty. Let me switch this. Swap. Okay. All right, at some point, I'm going to need to have you be able to hear a video audio. So I might need to be pointed in that direction. Okay. All right, so thank you. So I'm going to talk a little bit on military culture and mental health with the focus on the LGBT and trans community as far as our veterans go. So in order to do that, I'm going to put it in a little bit of a historical context so that, you know, understanding of LGBT military and veterans experiences. So I'm going to start off with a little story here. So by the middle of the war, we're talking about World War II, the military sought new ways to target and expel homosexuals, and that's the term that's used. And I'm sure Savannah has discussed that word here in the past in terms of that's pretty much viewed as a derogatory term. So excuse me for using that, but I'm using it in context of the history here. So instead of charging individuals with sodomy, a court-martial defense, the military began identifying suspected homosexuals as psychopaths. In other words, instead of charging service members with a crime of behavior or action, the military charged service members with the crime of being. Such a move created an efficient system of discrimination and prosecution of homosexuals, members of the military. So service members who were persecuted by Section 8 blue discharge were purged from bases and units and sent to mental institutions and makeshift quarantine brigs where they suffered from isolation, depression, and humiliation and were stripped of their rights and dignity. I think some of this also plays into what Savannah was talking about in terms of the DSM. And, you know, although we've made it a long way from, you know, having it be viewed as some sort of psychopathic issue, I think we still have a long way to go in in terms of really ironing out things as far as mental health diagnoses go. Okay, so as the story continues, despite the threat of persecution, gay and lesbian service members thrived during World War II. As with most young soldiers, many had never left their homes before, and the war provided them with an opportunity to find community, camaraderie, and in some cases, first loves. These new friendships gave gay and lesbian GIs refuge from the hostility that surrounded them and allowed for a distinct subculture to develop within the military. Service members on every war front enjoyed drag show entertainment. An entire gay lexicon was developed from the writings of Dorothy Parker, and eventually an underground queer newspaper emerged, known as the Myrtle Beach Bitch, excuse my language, or Myrtle Beach Belle. So these were covertly shared news and stories between bases and units. So even in spite of what was happening there seemed to be this underground movement that was creating community for the LGB service members at the time. Okay, so this is interesting. This story here with the picture with Phyllis, Arbery, and Mildred in the Women's Army Auxiliary Corps. Many lesbians in the armed forces rose to positions of influence. Phyllis Aubrey, for instance, was featured in propaganda articles because she represented the ideals of the Women's Army Auxiliary Corps. Unknown to the Army, they also selected Aubrey's lover as the other ideal Women's Army Auxiliary Corps person. So the irony of that is that they selected two homosexuals to represent the idea of the Army Auxiliary Corps. So that was kind of like their own internal inside joke there as far as that went. So for many, World War II marked only the start of lifelong struggles and their identity. The systemic purges of bases and units ripped apart the communities and relationships that had been developed over shared sacrifices. Blue discharges followed veterans their entire lives and made them ineligible for all veteran services. In 1953, President Eisenhower signed Executive Order 10450 that banned homosexuals from federal employment. Over 5,000 federal employees lost their jobs over accusations of homosexuality. These federal discriminatory actions drove LGBTQ people further into the shadows of society and emboldened law enforcement and politicians who became more violent toward gay and lesbian citizens. On June 28, 1969, police raided the Stonewall Inn in the Greenwich Village neighborhood of New York City. Patrons of the gay bar fought back and sparked a violent uprising that started the gay rights movement in the United States. Gay and lesbian veterans of World War II became some of the first to fight military discrimination and blue discharges in the years following World War II. However, military discrimination became a cornerstone issue for the LGBTQ civil rights movement in the decades following the Vietnam War. The debate continued until 2010, when Don't Ask, Don't Tell was repealed and military service members could serve openly. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about on a personal note was I'm a 20-year retired military veteran. I've retired in 2006. I joined in 1986. Back in 1986, there was no Don't Ask, Don't Tell. When I was going through my military processing, I was specifically asked as I was going through my physical military processing is, are you homosexual? Which is a standard question that was asked to everyone. So you either had a yes or a no. Wanting to join the military and serve my country, of course, I said no. And I lied in order for me to serve my country. But that's just like that question in of itself it's like, oh, let's screen you out as soon as you come here. Okay. And of course, as I served there, there's a big LGBT population within the military, and we did kind of create our own underground support community as we served. And of course, there were witch hunts and things like that that happened during that time frame. I've watched people get kicked out for being gay. I've used people use gay as a reason to get kicked out because they didn't want to be in the service anymore. So with that comes with a whole bunch of other things as far as military service goes. All right, so now we're going to fast forward into some present day concerns and solutions. Okay, so one of the things, all right, I will go here. All right, so one of the things I want to talk about is the effects of the discrimination that happens. So according to a study, 19% of LGBT troops are still afraid of career consequences, even though we're post don't ask, don't tell. Even though we're in the okay, we can openly serve, it's not something that is, the discrimination and the undertows within the military are still there. So the fear of if I come out, then it's going to come out in another way. I might not get promotion. I'm still going to be discriminated against. I'm not going to make rank. I'm not going to get the kind of orders I want, etc. And plus, there's still, the underhanded types of, ethical issues that occur, etc. So anyway, as we go on. Okay, all right, so we got about 8 minutes. So, all right, so another thing is about the double closet. So the double closet for the military person is do I become out and proud and then risk being isolated within, the camaraderie of the military, or do I not do that or kind of like, do I keep my military service a secret from my other LGBT community who may be anti-war or may not, think that we're selling ourselves out for that. So there's always that kind of double closet that happens in reference to LGBT within the military. Okay. All right, so here's some of the medical stuff. As far as the impacts that happen on LGBT, we have, there's health risks that are associated with smoking, other types of phobia, panic attacks, substance abuse, other mental health conditions that are independent of maybe other things related to combat or stress disorders, etc. All right, so okay, so here's some of the things. There's 134,000 transgender veterans currently that are identified. Okay, I'm sure there's a lot more, but this is just what's identified through the Department of Veterans Affairs. There's also about 15,000 active transgender service members. The likelihood of a transgender service member to die from suicide is 6 times the amount of the general population. There's an 89% increase in homelessness with this population as well. One of the positive things is the VA does have veteran care coordinators now that are specific for LGBT, and there's a PRIDE program that's supposed to help bridge the gap in order to make sure that there's services that are meeting the veteran needs. One of the good things that I saw is that there was actually this came out this week. So basically Secretary Dennis McDonough is reviewing VA policies. There are policies in place for transgender and LGBT personnel, but they're going to go ahead and revisit those things. We know that the last administration did some stuff in terms of taking some rights away, and so we're trying to get ourselves back there and make sure that we're using you know, LGBT informed language when we're doing assessments. And part of my breakout rooms, we're going to do some exercises on that. So, all right. So what's next? Okay, so I'm going to quickly share this. Is this okay? It's only like 3-4 minutes. All right. So I want to make sure that I could share. How do I share the
Round button, click when you're sharing the video.
how can I make sure that you guys can hear it? Share sound. I got it. I found it. Share sound. Perfect. Okay, here we go.
I knew I was gay long before I joined the Navy, but you know, for my security clearance, I wasn't about to say that I was gay. If I did, you know, then my chances of getting in the Navy was zilch.
The damage that the society does to us is all on the inside. You know, you learn never to trust anybody.
I served under Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and I wasn't out technically, and you know, when I got in, it was different though. It was still a little hard, not being able to be open and honest with the people that I was working with.
I put my personal needs and desires to the side to be the best Marine that I could be.
My so-called friends found out about me and that I'm gay, and they kind of said, well, you know what, we'll go ahead and keep your secret a secret, but you know, there's some things you have to do for us to do that. The guys that basically put me in that situation, they should have been punished for using that blackmail against me. And my little bit of time in being gay was a bigger punishment than, you know, breaking the sexual harassment policy of the military.
When I got out, it was like the fear, this overwhelming weight that was constantly on me of getting found out and getting kicked out. So to have that burden lifted off of me was incredible breath of fresh air. That lasted for about 2 days before I was like, wait a minute, what do I do now? Because all my brothers, I still couldn't tell them. You know, I still couldn't tell them anything. I was ashamed to tell them. I was ashamed of myself. So I immediately, and not on purposely, walled them all off.
And when you start to avoid everybody, you're at home, and it just cycles. It just cycles around, I guess, in your mind.
I would get depressed and wouldn't know why. I didn't know it was because I really wanted to be her. I would just feel as though, what am I going to do?
I would just notice changes in my own, you know, behavior, you know, not doing things that I would typically, you know to do, sleeping a lot, just agitated, drinking more.
I basically got to a point where, all right, let's see what the VA is saying they can help. Let's see what they can do. So we went ahead and tried it.
It has changed since the 1950s. It's changed since the 1960s. You don't have to go to an unlicensed, pardon my language, moron to give you bad advice about how you feel and who you are. You can find sympathetic and supportive professionals, and a lot of them, many of them, are in the VA system. So I'm very grateful for what I've learned through the Veterans Administration hospital system, and also from the support I've gotten from people who aren't even in that role but are at the VA.
For me, one of the benefits of counseling is that they are able to either, one, see things that I'm not seeing, or they are able to, just through talking it out, I will then have an epiphany about, oh, whoa, okay, this is how this is tied together.
The counselor is there to not more than guide, but teach you and have you look at the world a different way. My counselor said, it's okay. It's okay to be gay. It's okay because you are loved, right?
I use the VA for my one-on-one when I'm feeling stressed and I need to talk to someone. It's not the trance portion. It's mostly dealing with my learning how to forgive, and move forward. I attend the support group, and I'm very much so involved every Tuesday because there are a number of girls that are coming in, and we all have different stories.
I think a part of that is, for me, has always been kind of talking and, sharing what I'm going through, being open with myself and others, having that support group. But I feel great. I feel better than I have in years.
So now I can be me. I can enjoy life, period. I know the direction which I want to go, not where someone else is leading me. And I can help the people that I want to help. And I know that I don't have to do this alone.
Okay, thank you for that. So are we ready to switch over to the next things?
So while we're attending breakout rooms, thank you, Maria. We have a short clip about what occurred with CNN today, so we wanted to show you that clip is connected, and then we go into the breakout rooms. Maria will expand more on her research and the topic at hand. Thanks, Maria. Some more to come.
New this morning, freshman Congresswoman Marie Newman is speaking out for the first time about her feud with Republican Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene over the Equality Act. That's a law that would ban discrimination against LGBTQ Americans. This began when Congresswoman Newman displayed a transgender flag in the hallway directly across from Congresswoman Greene's office. In response, Greene tweeted, referring to Newman's 20-year-old transgender daughter as her, quote, biological son. Hours later, Marjorie Taylor Greene then posted this video of her putting a sign up that reads, quote, there are two genders, male and female, trust the science, exclamation point. Joining us now is Democratic Congresswoman Marie Newman for her first interview on this issue. Congresswoman, thank you very much for being here.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
How did this fight with Marjorie Taylor Greene start exactly?
Well, it was never meant to be a fight. It was a statement I felt very necessary. This woman has supported insurrection. She voted against the election. She believes in a wide variety of conspiracy theories. She has been called out any number of times. But on this issue yesterday, she tried to block the Equality Act. And I felt as though she needed to hear from us. And what I mean by that is that I just wanted to make a statement so that she sees LGBTQ plus people. And so the symbolism was simply to put the flag out there so she has to see our community every day. I'm immensely proud of my daughter, and that's all anyone is asking for, is to be treated as anyone else. And that's what I want Representative Greene to see.
So when you walked outside of your office and you saw that sign that she put up that said there are two genders, male and female, trust the science, what were your thoughts?
Well, two things. I thought, wow, she's got a lot of time on her hands because she would have to go get that printed and decide that this is the right thing to do. So it kind of wild on a bunch of fronts. But, further, what I would say is that she's welcome to her sign. No one's buying it, and that is not science.
Well, I mean, not only that, she likes science. I mean, this is the same Congresswoman who proudly doesn't wear a mask in close confined quarters, as we saw, I believe, on January 6th. But I guess my question is, when you put that transgender flag outside of her office to get her attention, obviously, how did you think she would respond? I mean, this is a woman who seems to always be ready for a dare. We remember her chasing and harassing David Hogg, a survivor of a school shooting. And so what did you think she would do?
I was not concerned with her reaction. What I wanted her to do was see the LGBTQ community and understand that equality is way overdue. So it is immaterial to me. She can keep going with this, whatever she's doing. And I have no interest in it. What I have interest in now is turning the corner and getting back to the work. That was 30 seconds of my time yesterday. We have been working hard in committee. And by the way, we're getting some consensus on a bunch of different things with regard to Republicans. I am worried about making sure that American people get direct payments, that cities, towns, and states get money so they can roll out this vaccine. And rolling out this vaccine is tantamount to success across our nation. and getting this economy back on track. So she's going to spend time running to FedEx and creating goofy signs. Have at it.
So you're saying you're done with this tit for tat, but do you think that she'll up the ante?
If she does, then that's her right to do whatever she likes. Again, I am busy working on bills and legislation that, in fact, will move this country forward and get beyond this.
About
and I have to say,
yeah, quickly.
If I just may add one thing, Allison, several Republican colleagues have reached out to me to express their concern over her hateful comments. And so this was a bipartisan reaction to her nastiness, her disrespect, and her, quite frankly, loose touch with reality. So here's what I would say is that I made my statement. I feel good that she is seeing that flag every day and is seeing LGBTQ folks. Whatever she chooses to move forward, it was never meant to be a tit for tat or a game or anything. I just needed to make that statement to her.
On that point of bipartisan support that you're getting, let me read Congressman Adam Kinzinger's tweet in support of you. He says, "This is sad, and I'm sorry this happened. Republican Representative Newman's daughter is transgender, and this video and tweet represents the hate and fame-driven politics of self-promotion at all evil costs. This garbage must end in order to #restore our GOP." What did you think when you read that?
Well, let me start by saying the macro issue is it's very important to have a strong GOP. We need two parties in this country. So I was so pleased that my colleague in Illinois stood up and made a comment on this because I know he is working hard to restore faith in his party. And that's really important. By the way, moderate Republicans have reached out to me on bills and on ideas, and we are working together. So her divisiveness is in her corner of the party. And I don't think it's going to be successful. I might be eternally the optimist, but we are working together. We are getting bills out the door, and we are finding consensus on restaurants, on economic issues for the American people. But here's what I can guarantee you is that Democrats are going to deliver. And we're going to deliver strongly, and we're going to keep going. So if she wants to spend time on signs and running around being nasty, rock on.
About the Equality Act, can you tell our viewers exactly what it is? And Congresswoman Green and her allies and supporters seem very concerned about the idea of transgender women competing in women's sports. So can you address that concern of hers?
Certainly. That's called a gigantic red herring. That is introducing something that has nothing to do with anything. The Equality Act is meant to prevent discrimination in housing, employment, in public spaces, private spaces, and across the map, right? So this is just meant to prevent discrimination. This is not meant to do anything else. So these red herrings about religious liberties, by the way, we all know that that's already written into our Constitution. That's why we revere our Constitution. And red herrings about, I mean, she said something vile about bathrooms to my daughter and misnamed her. So she can keep being vile and she can keep coming up with red herrings. The Equality Act is just simply about creating a equal world for everybody.
Congresswoman Marie Newman, we really appreciate you coming on New Day first to talk about all of this. Thank you. Great to talk to you.
Thank you and have a great day.
So while Chin is going to assign the breakout rooms, we want to give some recognition to our Kenya guests who are on the call. We have some LGBTQI+ individuals from Kenya who are on this call. So not only are we local and nationally, we are internationally. Welcome to our Kenya friends. Yay. So go ahead, you will see on your screen that you will select your room. Either you received a 1 or a 2, press join 1 or join 2. Jonah and I will go into breakout room number 1, and Maria G will finish in leading their breakout room in room number 2. So go ahead. Yes, everyone is back. Okay, excellent. So as you're returning, welcome back to our session. We kind of ran out of time. My apologies. We'd like to take the remaining 7. We're right on schedule to cut off at 8. So we have exactly 6 minutes to do a summary of each of the breakout sessions. So We have voted in breakout room A, who will be the person who will summarize breakout room A conversation. And then Maria, do you have someone who asked really good questions that you could pick on to be the breakout room B summary? So what they'll do is talk about what happened in your breakout room.
Well, I'll look for a volunteer because I didn't do that.
That's okay.
I didn't solicit
Amy,
anybody.
That's okay. And I'm sorry I didn't get to tell you that. So we had to give praise to Maria. We had another presenter who was scheduled for the block, but couldn't make it because of a family emergency. And so Maria G stepped in quickly. So I must share that with you all in terms of the ability for a presenter to come in and last minute and say, boom. Okay. Amy, are you on the call?
I am on the call. Are you putting me on the spot, Savannah?
Yes, but we also have Aaron, and Aaron Shipman. So Aaron, can you join us too? Which will be fascinating. Amy and Aaron, the double A connection. So we'll have you all kind of summarize. But so let's summarize breakout room number A. We picked Joe Miller. Where's Joe? Joe.
I am right here.
Okay, Joe, go ahead and give a 3-minute synopsis. Jen, you're so good at this. I feel like a Hollywood Squares. I'll take Aaron for the block.
Well, okay. Well, Savannah and Jonah shared their stories of the transition and also what they have been through. And as an old straight white guy, I found it just pretty incredible. Several things. One, what they've been through and the abuse they have both suffered and what they have been through in the transition, and also the external folks around them who have sometimes been not so helpful, to put it bluntly or gently, and but then there has been some help. And to me, it is astonishing that they can even share that. For some kind of an internal kind of guy anyway. I come from originally from a STEM background, although I am a retired elder in the Texas Annual Conference, which is very different from the Mountain Sky Con. Very different. And that's another story. But anyway, just appreciate that they can even do that. The other thing is, to me, what they have been up against versus me, as I have come to realize over a period of years, that I do have white privilege and I have male privilege. And they've made me realize that I have straight privilege. And privilege is a great thing, but it should be for everyone. And to hear their stories it's really pretty emotional. And I'm not an emotional person. And it's sad to me what they've been through and what anybody goes through. And to be a part of that and hear that has been very difficult to put into words, except to say it is very, not only a mental and reasoning kind of thing, which I have been through, but to go through the heart part and the emotional part. And it's just, I can't tell you how valuable it is for me to listen to you two. It's just been, like I said, I can't put it in words, but it's changed my life. Thank you.
Technology. Sorry, guys. So we may go over about 5 more minutes tonight. My apologies. So we're going to be ending at 8:05. So you guys could just stay with us because this is so critical. Amy and Aaron, if you guys could summarize for 3 minutes Maria's room, please.
Yeah. So we kind of initiated our conversation with some back and forth questions. And 2 of the first questions were really about availability and quality of care through the VA. What was being offered and kind of the consistency of that, and what may be available, maybe in larger areas. And we ended really talking about the process for families, that process of loss and grief, and that's okay, because it's a transition that everyone is experiencing together. Was kind of my takeaway, that it is very necessary and important that families have a place to experience this together and receive support as well. It's difficult, I think, for people to process through it in a way that feels safe. I can only imagine. And then Aaron very kindly spoke to his experience with the ministry side of identity, and what that feels like when you are moving into that, I guess, field, in particular, when you plan to serve in ministry. So.
Thank you, Amy. Aaron, can you give us a 2-minute synopsis of kind of what you said?
Yeah, I think one of the big walkaways for me was talking about the cultural awareness and cultural competency that is necessary to serve military veterans, and really talking about that going well beyond just race or ethnicity when we're talking about cultural competency, but looking at other aspects of culture that really affect an individual's identity and experience, and how that's something that's lacking when you have to look to a lot of community providers when the VA doesn't have enough persons, and how that's missing in the graduate school education and then the licensing process, and that's really left up to the professional to try to discover that versus it being part of a structured education so that persons can be prepared to adequately meet their needs. And so then you add in the double layer of the intersectionality of identity with veteran and LGBTQ, and that becomes an even rarer person or professional to find to be able to provide those services. And then when discussing about the ambivalence and ambiguous loss, how that impacts the family and how the family can be engaged to address those things. And talked about what really stood out to me was the tree, and it was really using art therapy. That's what jumped out to me. I know there's 2 modalities that she brought up, but I really heard it was focusing on the art therapy aspect of it and creating out of this tree experiences, and talking about what might kind of, I was thinking of the leaf that falls off, but what is the leaf that blooms in its place? What is the new experience? What is the new opportunity? And those are what really stood out to me. And then Amy was touching on, I had shared that I was struck when Maria was talking about the question asked at induction about, are you a homosexual, and then having to lie, and how the question, are you a self-practicing homosexual, has been part of the United Methodist churches for at least prior to now, for a long time has been, and I don't know if it's still there, but has been the question that was asked at the Board of Ministry, and the number of people who have had to lie and hide that identity to serve in ministry in the church.
Thank you very much, Aaron. And thank you all, Joe, Amy, and Aaron. And big thank you to Maria and to Jonah and to all of you. I now hand this over to Don Messer for closing thoughts.
What an evening we've had, and how the time flies by when we're so absorbed with such fascinating and powerful speakers. Really, I'm grateful to each of you for participating tonight as speakers, for the wonderful video assistance from Chin Tan and from the help from Amy Hawthorne. I'm so grateful for all the people who sponsor this event. It doesn't just happen. It takes people like the ones that we see on the screen here, who have supported it, the Center for Pastoral Effectiveness, Park Hill, Christchurch, and others. I'm going to slip right through this to say these nonprofits have supported the program, and the churches that have come forward, including the Reconciling Ministries Network. I should say, even as I talk here, we had visitors tonight from Kenya who logged in at 5 in the morning to participate. And we have had people from Texas, Ohio, Illinois, and I don't know where else. The money that we get from the sponsors and from help is going to go to three areas. One, we're going to help provide money to support It Takes a Village right here in Denver, which is so important. Also to the Alexander Foundation Scholarship, which reaches out to transgender youth. And then to a trans drop-in center that I visited in the Muslim section of Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. These issues are not just local, they're not just national, they're international. We're in a quest for human rights worldwide, and all of you are on the forefront. So I thank you. I invite you back on March 11th for the final session, and we look forward to your participation. Invite your friends, join us, and you can yet be a sponsor if you think this is something you want to do. Thank you. God bless you.
Seems like yesterday we used to rock the show. I laced the track, you locked the flow. So far from hanging on the block for dough. Notorious, they got to know that life ain't always what it seemed to be. Words can't express what you mean to me. Even though you're gone, we still a team. Through your family, I'll fulfill your dreams. In the future, can't wait to see if you open up the gates for me. Reminisce sometime. The night they took my friend. Try to black it out, but it plays again. When it's real, feeling's hard to conceal. Can't imagine all the pain I feel. Give anything to hear half your breath. I know you're still living your life after death. Us while we pray for you. Every day we pray for you. Till the day we meet again. In my heart is where I keep you, friend. Memories give me the strength I need to proceed. Strength I need to believe. My thoughts big, I just can't define. Wish I could turn back the hands of time. Us in the six, shop for new clothes and kicks. You and me taking flicks, making hits, stages they receive you on. Still can't believe you're gone. Give anything to hear half your breath. I know you're still living your life after death.